Every 6 months, I open up the community for you to ask your questions regarding twin flames, and this time I opened it up to anything with regards to the soul family. So here are the answers to 17 of your posed queries. The concept of twin flames have been spoken about for a very, very long time. They were spoken about in Plato's The Symposium with the myth of Androgyna and also Phaedrus. They were spoken about in Zoroastrianism with Numag. Twins were spoken about in the Vedas and Upanishads, in ancient Egypt with the harmony of duality. They were spoken about with regards to syzygy in Gnosticism and in the Kabbalah. However, all of these origins speak on twin flames as dualistic, split soul entities that need to come back together. Now, almost 3,000 years later, we have the benefit of quantum physics, quantum mechanics, string theory, biology, the first law of thermodynamics, and on and on and on to scientifically show that there is no difference between anything. So while I utilize the term twin flame, my guidance is really about the interconnectedness to all, how it can be proved, and how the ego participates in receiving soul family from the higher self in order to remember who you are. Maybe, maybe not. If your relationship with the karmic was ended by the higher self because it became more detrimental to your ego than your ego's growth ability at the time, then chances are the karmic will not show up again. If, however, you left the relationship by choice without learning the lesson, the higher self may send that same karmic back in again to see if you can learn the lesson this time. I get this question a lot, and it's very hard to express because attempting to put universal energy into 3D language and emotions is not very cohesive. However, I do already have a video called What Union Feels Like in the 5D that I will link down below. So as abstract as this will sound, union with the self feels like everything and nothing simultaneously. It feels like absolute comprehension and comprehensiveness. It feels like non-attachment. And no, your ego does not long for the twin because you, and I mean you in all capital letters, not the ego you, remembers and understands with every fiber of your being that there is no twin. It's just you. So why would you long for yourself when you're everywhere and nowhere? The problem with this question is that the runner twin doesn't exist, as they are simply you. When the 3D physically manifested twin comes back after the final separation, that means that you are in union with the self. And since the self is the same as everything else, technically we could answer this question yes. But please realize that the caveat is that you're asking specifically about another's ego. Does the runner have ego degradation when you enter union with yourself? Yes. Is the runner in union after ego degradation because you are the same? Yes, because the runner is not separate from you in energy, but there is a difference in egos. It's convoluted, I know, but once you reach union with the self, you won't care if another's ego does. We have to be careful with believing things we experience during true ego degradation, because as the ego is dismantling and cracking apart, it will show us a lot of things that may or may not be accurate. In fact, even when the ego is not dismantling, it shows us things all the time that are not accurate. Also, if you've been through a severe ego degradation, there can be bouts of psychosis where you hallucinate and imagine things very vividly. So to be perfectly honest, I would say disregard all things that your ego tells you are real while you're in ego degradation. And afterwards, if you are still having memories of a past life, just remember that time is not linear and everything is energetically the same. So if you're experiencing memories from a past life, it's the ego filtering the energy in a way that your current ego can experience energy from another ego's perspective. It's sort of like muscle memory. And when I say another ego, remember that it's still you because you are everything. No, chances are they run towards another romantic connection because they are attempting to distract themselves from what's going on regarding the energy felt on the twin flame journey. They're also most likely trying to convince themselves that the energy felt from the twin is just in their head and not real. Any distraction from the journey is called a third party, and I have many videos on them. You're utilizing the same as having to do with differentiated physicality. We are the same because we are made up of the exact same thing as everything else, but only differentiated by ego. Chakra energy is affected by 3D physical things such as trauma, physical injuries, and emotions. Just because you are the same as your twin, just as you are the same as everything else, doesn't mean that your twin's ego is the same as yours. When we speak about the runner being more developed in the lower chakras and the chaser being more developed in the upper, this has to do with patterns on the 3D plane that occur based on experiences. They don't. Balance is a dualistic concept that does not exist except to the ego. This is a main sticking point for me when it comes to twin flame coaches trying to express that there is masculine, feminine, positive, negative, balancing of energies, etc. You are no different from your twin flame. Your energy is no different than your twin. Your energy is no different than anything except how your ego perceives it. Everything having to do with opposites is simply the ego. There is nothing to balance because there is no difference. The more you believe that you are separate from the twin or that you need to work on balancing the energies between you, the further you get away from yourself, the universe manifested in physical form, and the more you play into the ego's false sense of duality. Yes, you can be friends with a karmic, absolutely. However, the friendship is not going to last a super long time. So with the question of them becoming a supportive family-like member, no, they will not be so. If you are dealing with a soulmate plus karmic, however, then the relationship can last much longer than a straight-up karmic because they have the soulmate base to work from. If you're asking this question because you have a karmic in your life who you just want to keep in your life regardless if they're simply friends, then you're not learning your lesson and this person will not remain in your life for long, regardless of whether you choose to friend zone them. If you're asking because you've had what you deem as a karmic in your life for a long period of time and you find them supportive, chances are they're not just a karmic. There are two ways of temporarily stopping soul family members from coming into your life: by coming into union with the self or by finding non-attachment. However, just because you come into union, have an ego degradation, become non-attached, choose to detach, etc., does not mean the higher self is going to deem your ego done with learning lessons. You will always learn lessons in this incarnation because that's the entire reason you manifested yourself with a human ego. So whether you are raking in the soul family members to teach you things or doing your best to block them out, the higher self will then bring in experiences to teach you the same things that the soul family members would. Your choice is how you prefer learning. Nothing happens to it. It's always there, just as connection energy to everything is always there. The only difference between a twin and anything else is how the ego is able to filter the energy. So again, the energy doesn't go anywhere, it's always present. If you choose not to be with the twin in the 3D, it's then about non-attaching to the feelings of the connection energy and remembering that it's truly just connection energy to the higher self. I understand this question so deeply, and I will say that the current book that I'm writing, actually just finished, is completely on ego degradation with a very large section on pointlessness. But for a brief answer here, I'll say this. Your ego has been given the opportunity to reprogram itself with what you choose to program it with after ego degradation. This is the antithesis of how you functioned prior to your ego degradation, where everything was programmed externally, via family, friends, culture, religion, politics, etc. You now know that there is no point because you are the universe manifested in physical form. However, you now get to choose what you place the most value on, and maybe that value is something completely different than it ever has been, and that's absolutely okay. Truly think about what you value the most. Is it helping other egos? Is it absolute transparency in all things? Is it taking care of animals? Is it finding non-attachment? What do you value most? That is now your purpose to everything that you do. And I do mean everything. When you find yourself thinking, why even bother? It doesn't matter. You take your object of value and put it to the forefront. If the thing that you are doing does not attribute to your object of value, you either find how it can or stop doing it. A few things, and I also talk about this in my videos, twin flames and attachment theory, twin flames versus ghosting, and twin flame runner and justification, which I will link all of them down below. When a karmic leaves, they may ghost you. A twin will never ghost you. A karmic will most likely reach out to you over and over again and beg for you back during separations. A twin will not do that until the final separation. As time progresses and you are away from the 3D physically manifested person, you will begin to feel negatively perceived emotions towards a karmic, and or you will become apathetic. The longer you are away from a twin, the deeper unconditional love becomes and the more you truly love yourself. No, because it's a reunion and not union. Reunion is delineated solely by physical presence of the twin in each other's lives, without union having been reached by you. So if you are not in union, you will still have chaser energy present of desiring solely egoic things without recognizing that there is no separation between you and anything else. And if you have chaser energy present and your ego is laden with expectations, judgments, abandonment fears, desire for control, etc., you will continue to go into separation after separation from the 3D physically manifested twin until you truly remember that you are the only thing, you are the universe. At that point, and with the practice of non-attachment, union can be reached and you can choose whether you even want to participate on the twin flame journey in the 3D realm. If you're utilizing detachment, you will not reach union. Detachment is a trauma response that sublimates and suppresses emotions. And when we do such, union cannot be reached. If you're asking how you know when you've non-attached to the physically 3D manifested twin, you will no longer have a preference of whether they physically return to your life. And you'll feel connected to everything all at once, recognizing that everything is just you in different costumes. I have a series on my website called Non-Attachment and Union that goes into this much further. Ego degradation doesn't technically have stages, but rather can be prolonged and or pushed if you continuously fight with your ego. At this point, there is no breakthrough, but more so breakdown. So for example, if you find yourself overwhelmed and do not deal with the emotions, you may feel stirrings of anxiety and depression. If you fight with your ego and do not let it express or feel those emotions, the breakdown will come more and more by going deeper into anxiety or depression. As you continue to fight with your ego, you will keep going further and further towards rock bottom until the ego has no choice but to break and reevaluate everything it has ever perceived, which is ego degradation. You can't, just like you cannot be 100% sure about anything. All things we know as facts go through the scientific method where an idea is presented, tested, and proven or disproven. but it's still being delineated as a fact by an ego or multiple egos. Without getting into the nitty-gritty of scientific evidence and data here, you can never prove anything is 100% true. Your ego knows nothing except from its own experiences and programming. This, unfortunately, is where belief comes in, just like you believe every other thing that occurs in your life, because those aren't facts either, but just experiences differentiated by each ego experiencing them. The ego will never know if this person is 100% a twin flame, because twin flames are not solely experienced in the 3D. It's your own energy that your ego is fighting against, as you are the universe, and it's your ego's own desire to label things and know for certain what those labels are. It doesn't matter if the person is your twin, as long as you're growing, learning, and expanding. If you remember that you are the universe manifested in physical form and begin healing without suppression, you're doing the only thing required of you in this manifestation. You are your own twin flame because nothing else exists other than you. Until next week, all of my best and highest vibrations to you.